A data firm supported by former Alphabet Chairman Eric Schmidt is now working for some of the top 2020 Dem candidates. New FEC records show Joe Biden, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Bernie Sanders, their campaigns paying thousands and thousands of dollars for research from Schmidt's data firm, Civis Analytics. Schmidt, who helped run and fund Hillary's 2016 campaign, still serves as technical advisor to Google's board. As far as I know, he's not on the payroll, but there it is. Joining us tonight, Peter Schweizer, New York Times bestselling author, president of the Government Accountability Institute, and host of a new investigative series entitled The Drill Down. Peter, great to have you with us. Let's start.
Great to be with you as always, Lou.
Eric Schmidt, I can't imagine that he would support, advise, counsel a Democratic candidate. It's just, this is, to me, fascinating that there is not more of an inquiry into Google itself. What they've done is just extraordinary in terms of all the visits their executives paid to President Obama during his time in the White House. I believe they were the most representative of any firm or maybe entity, private entity, in the country.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, we were all familiar with the term revolving door, and people think of it, you know, defense contractors going in and out of the Pentagon. Well, in the Obama administration, Google was the #1 company that had executives visiting the White House. And you had something like a couple hundred, I believe, Google executives who left Google, went to work in the Obama administration, and then went back to Google. Look, people have the right to do these things. The problem is a company like Google has the power and has the inclination to dramatically influence an election in a way that nobody can know about it. They can manipulate the algorithm. You've got whistleblowers that say that they've done that. You've got internal documents that have been leaked that have done that. Yes, exactly, against conservatives, but also against conservative candidates in favor of liberal Democratic candidates. That's a campaign violation. It needs to be investigated.
And do you think this administration will? Certainly, it would seem a Republican administration should. I'm sure that the Democrats would have returned the favor had it worked out the other way.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you had a big high-tech firm that was run by conservatives and that there had been allegations that they were helping certain political campaigns in certain ways. You can believe, and I think honestly they'd be rightfully, you know, capable of doing this, is to send some Department of Justice prosecutors over there to start poking and looking around. I mean, you know, if we're concerned about campaign violations of, you know, people giving to a candidate by donating to their sister and having their sister give, and straw donations like that are prosecuted, my goodness, we ought to be looking and investigating one of the largest corporations in America, which has been charged by some of its own former employees of tipping the scales in favor of certain political candidates. It's a slam dunk, and I hope the Trump administration does that.
In Facebook, a new police on language and intent, I suppose. I'm not quite sure how they plan to carry that out. But we're looking at, it seems to me, a requirement for a new definition of public responsibility on the part of corporate America and adherence to old ideas about anti-competitive monopoly, whether it be the, you know, at least de facto monopoly when it comes to search. Google is it. When it comes to social media, Facebook is it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they're completely dominant. And look, Ted Cruz has been sounding this alarm bell for a while on Capitol Hill. These tech companies are protected by the Communications Decency Act in a section that basically says because and as long as they are neutral platforms, they don't have to worry about certain things related to monopoly or liability that media firms like Fox News does. Well, Cruz's point is they're not neutral platforms anymore. So let's stop fooling ourselves. If they're not going to be neutral platforms, why do they get the benefits of being a neutral platform? I think Cruz is right. They ought to choose. They ought to be neutral platforms in the true sense of the word, and they can keep their current status of some of these legal protections they have. Or if they want to continue in the path they're going, they're going to be treated as media companies, which means, you know, if a broadcasting company wants to buy a television station somewhere, that has to be approved. If you do something and somebody thinks you've libeled them as a media company, you can be sued. That should apply to these tech companies if they're going to act like media companies.
And where we are right now, it looks to me like some of these companies spending tens and tens of millions of dollars on lobbying and influencing policy. It looks to me like a lot of lawmakers are outright intimidated by these companies. They're afraid to pursue a public policy responsibility that, at least in my opinion, that they should. And I'm just curious about, you know, how far this is going to go, because Cruz is amongst the very few who's had the guts to actually say something, and I don't know of a single committee that is prepared to do much of anything about what is an awesome economic consolidation of economic policy and political power.
Well, I think, as Lou, you probably know even better than I do, profiles in courage are not very prevalent on Capitol Hill. Yeah. What they want to do is get reelected, and as long as they think their constituents either don't care or it's not that important to them, they're not going to address it. I think people need to let their elected officials know they're concerned about this, they're concerned about these companies that are impacting our elections in a hidden, secretive way at a profound level, and that they're also silencing certain voices. And I think if these politicians realize that the voters who put them into office are concerned about these issues, perhaps they'll start showing more courage and start, carrying the torch the way Ted Cruz and some other people